Like you don't see Instagram being blasted up on the Phantom of the Opera like stage, do you? And so that's what's kind of so cool about the uniqueness of the design of Dear Evan Hansen. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Broadway Battles. This is a 8-part series where in each episode you'll hear 2 musicals of a similar theme or genre compared and contrasted in a debate-style conversation.
We will also be having 2 performers from the Chicagoland area perform for you today. But before we get started, my name is Skylar McClure, and with me I have
Peyton Owen. And in addition to hearing us talk today, you'll get to hear Gwen Royal and Dylan Catapat sing songs from our 2 chosen musicals, which are Dear Evan Hansen and Dogfight.
Really quick before we begin, we also wanted to introduce to you the organization that we will be donating all of the money that we raise throughout these episodes, which is Chicago Children's Theater. They are an amazing organization in Chicago that puts on performances aimed towards children and does different workshops all geared towards kids. So be sure to donate to them in the link in our description.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started today. So today we'll give you a quick synopsis of each of these 2 musicals, and then we'll dive into the music composition, the story, the design, and then finish it off with some character development. Let's get started. So let's get into the synopsis of Dear Evan Hansen. So for those of you who don't know, Dear Evan Hansen is a pretty emotion-packed musical. It's definitely dramatic, to say the least. But it's been one of the most successful musicals in the last couple of years for sure, second only to maybe Hamilton.
Yeah.
But Dear Evan Hansen follows Evan Hansen, who's a boy who struggles with some severe social anxiety, and through a series of some misfortunate events, kind of ends up in this lie, in the fact that he was kind of like this brother-like figure to this peer of his who unfortunately committed suicide, when in reality he actually had no ties to them whatsoever. So the Murphy family kind of takes Evan in, and it kind of just snowballs into this incredibly big lie that clearly Evan can't really find his way out of. And alongside this, he kind of unintentionally starts this self-acceptance movement that kind of fuels a lot of the show. And it's honestly, it's a very emotional story, but it's a pretty heartwarming one by the end. And it's a pretty incredible musical to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Dear Evan Hansen's definitely an amazing musical that's was really like a great like segue for mental health and like that conversation.
Absolutely.
So to talk about Dogfight now, the synopsis of Dogfight is basically Eddie is in the Marines, and on their last night before he goes to Vietnam, they decide to do something called a dogfight, which is a Marine tradition where they bring the ugliest girl that they can find to a party. And so Eddie is going around trying to find a girl, meets Rose, asks her to come to this party, and she agrees, but she doesn't know that that's the reason she was asked.
Sure.
And so she goes to this party, and it kind of just follows their love story, and it's kind of a strange one.
Yeah, I mean both these shows are definitely like PG-13 types of musicals, but they definitely follow a pretty different storyline for sure.
Yeah, but they almost start off the same way in a way, because they both have a lie, and then it just like goes from there.
Yeah, that's very true. Yours definitely goes in a much different way than mine does, but both great musicals nonetheless. So let's get into the music composition of these 2 musicals, because for those of you who don't know, both of these musicals the music was written by Pasek and Paul. So same composers here, so there are definitely some pretty strong similarities between the music. So Dear Evan Hansen kind of falls into this pop rock genre. A lot of the music it's pretty groovy. I mean, a lot of the songs have become, almost for lack of a better term, like national anthems for musical theater, such as You Will Be Found. I mean, Who has not sung You Will Be Found, right? In every high school, every theater-related event. It's a pretty popular one. But I kind of want to draw attention almost to a negative side of Dear Evan Hansen's music, which is that it's pretty simple. Like, it lacks a lot of complexity within its own music, because you know, a lot of these other really famous musicals have full pit orchestras and very extravagant ensembles, but Dear Evan Hansen is like a cast of, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 or so, I want to say. And their pit consists of keyboard, drums, bass, and guitar. So it's like pretty much just those 4 instruments for most of these songs. And so the music itself is pretty simple in terms of, you know, compared to many other musicals.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that they only had such a small orchestra.
Yeah.
So that's actually really interesting. So then Dogfight, on the flip side, it was their very first musical that they had ever written. So it was definitely a creative endeavor for them. So similar to Dear Evan Hansen, it has a very contemporary feel. But something that I did want to talk about that I thought was really interesting is that there's no love duets really in Dogfight that are like a typical one. They have one duet between Rose and Eddie where it's called First Date Last Night, and it's like this kind of like awkward like interaction.
Yeah, it's a song Skylar and I have sung actually quite a few times.
On open mic night. But so it's just kind of like this like awkward thing, and so it's not really like a true love song. And I just thought that was really interesting because it is such a strange love story as it is to kind of have that tie in by not having a love song. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then something else too that I thought was really great is Rose, who's our like main female lead. She sings Nothing Short of Wonderful, which is a super upbeat and happy song. And she like leaves her room in heaps before she goes on this date with this guy. And then she moves into Pretty Funny, where she is kind of sad because she finds out that he had kind of lied to her. And I love the contrast of those two pieces. And speaking of Nothing Short of Wonderful, we are actually going to have Gwen Royal sing Nothing Short of Wonderful right now.
Take a look.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, holy cow, what to wear, and your hair, what a mess, pick a dress, oh my gosh, are you mourning a death, take a breath, what a look, I mistook you for butternut squash. Oh my gosh. Keep it soft, keep it bright, be a girl, something pink, don't you think, just a touch, not too much, he likes you, just be you, he won't care what you wear, I don't know, should I go with the pink or the blue? What to do? For someone who is nothing short of wonderful, nothing short of wonderful. Just a girl, just a guy, but it's him and it's you and it's true what you've heard, like a bird, how you lived in your chest feels a pull like you're full of a joy, 'cause a boy interrupted your shift. Like something nothing short of wonderful. Oh, it was nothing short of wonderful. What if when we're dancing, I'm clumsy, our feet collide? What if when we're dancing, he dips me, our lips meet, and we glide across the room? And it feels nothing short of wonderful, nothing short of wonderful. Hurry up, he won't wait, he can't wait half the night, either white or maroon, you're a loon, you're a mess, and you think you might best, but you've just gotta choose, pick the shoes and decide on the dress, and you'll be nothing short of wonderful, nothing short of wonderful. Oh my gosh, on a date, but you can't make him wait, no you can't make him late, and your room is in heaps and you can't see the floor, but you finally get what a girdle is for. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness, that was
Fantastic.
amazing.
That was so good.
She's so cute. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the acting was on point too.
Yeah,
Loved it.
for sure.
So let's kind of transition back into the storyline of these two musicals and dig deeper because there's definitely a lot to unravel between these two. So Dear Evan Hansen kind of revolves around this movement that is started by Evan Hansen, unintentionally, so to say, about self-acceptance. And it's one of the things that I think Dear Evan Hansen actually has an upper hand on Dogfight because the movement from this show is definitely a little bit better than the message from your show. But this movement focuses on self-acceptance and the fact that you're not alone, which is a huge part in Evan's life because he struggles so much with social anxiety. And while, of course, the musical is not all about social acceptance and, everything's happy, we do find a lot of conflict, and that specifically comes in the relationships that are found in the show. Specifically, the family relationships that happens throughout Dear Evan Hansen. For example, Evan Hansen becomes such a monumental figure in the Murphy family that he kind of starts to neglect his own mother, Heidi. And because he's always spending so much time there, Heidi's like, well, I'm your mother. Why are you not spending time with me? When on the flip side, the Murphy family, has actually no reason to be a part, or to have Evan be a part of them. But because they were so disconnected with their own son, they feel almost inclined to have Evan come in and, be a part of their family. So there's a lot of conflict between the relationships that we see in the show. But it is a pretty intense tale.
Yeah, for sure. There definitely isn't as much family conflict in Dogfight, but there is some conflict between our two main characters, Rose and Eddie Birdlace. When Eddie eventually ends up leaving for the Vietnam War, he kind of comes back, and this is the very end of the show.
Sure.
He comes back, and both of his best friends had died during this war, and he's very broken and doesn't really know where to go or doesn't know what to do, and he ends up going back and finding Rose, and Rose accepts him back into her life, which I think is really interesting. And it's definitely really controversial how the story ends because should Rose really have taken him back when he didn't write her when he was at war? And so there's kind of that bit of everybody kind of disagrees on whether or not Rose really should have accepted him back in his life because he kind of was terrible to her from the beginning and continued that throughout. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, there are definitely some similarities to how these shows end because they both kind of end with this attempt at resolution from this, pretty either nasty lie or nasty actions. And they do both kind of end on an up note, Rose does end up taking it back, and Evan does kind of end up accepting himself, and the Murphys kind of accept the fact that everybody makes mistakes, and so it does end on kind of a happier note, which is nice. But let's take this in a little bit of a different direction and talk about the design of these two musicals, because this is something that both of these musicals definitely are kind of on the opposite spectrum. For example, Dear Evan Hansen is a pretty minimalistic set that focuses a lot more on projections rather than actual set pieces. And of course, in each production, it's going to be different. But in at least the off-Broadway production of Dogfight, that was not the case. It was a pretty more developed set than Dear Evan Hansen was. But one thing I've noticed about the Dear Evan Hansen set is what it kind of relies on is one set piece, one pretty minimal set piece. For example, Evan Hansen's room has a bed, and the Murphys family's garage has a workbench. And they kind of incorporate the surroundings and specifically projections and kind of bright, lights behind them to symbolize the different areas that they're in. And then another kind of cool aspect of design about Dear Evan Hansen is their use of projections, like I've said, and specifically a focus on social media. Because throughout the show, there are a lot of songs, social acceptance that practically screams social media, and so they use a lot of the projections to kind of focus on, different social media platforms and the effect that it has. And it's such a modern feel compared to many other musicals. You don't see Instagram being blasted up on the Phantom of the Opera stage, do you? And so that's what's kind of so cool about the uniqueness of the design of Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah, I think the projections are super cool, and it really ties into the whole theme of just what social media can do to like the modern teen.
Yeah.
So kind of going back and talking about Dogfight set design, it was actually kind of hard to find the off-Broadway, because I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but Dogfight's never actually been on Broadway. It only was off-Broadway, so there wasn't a ton of stuff for me to go off of, just kind of like pictures here and there. So there wasn't, it was a showy set, there was like
Really
sparkly
was.
bits in the back, and it was very like 60s feel, with like the costumes and like the hair and the makeup. But something that I thought was really cool about Dogfight is they have one of those rotating walk things. Like
Rotating walk things.
I'm not sure what they're called, but they have one in Hamilton.
Like a turntable on the stage?
Yeah, and I just think those are really cool, and I worry that if I ever have to work with one of those, that I will fall off or trip and die. I don't know, but that's one element that I thought was really cool about Dogfight.
Yeah, and both these shows kind of, I've noticed that they use a lot of like neon lights on their set.
Yeah.
Specifically in a lot of the photos that you see when you just search up these musicals, is like, specifically with Dear Evan Hansen, it's a lot of like blue light, and there's a lot of like really dark lighting with like one spotlight, and kind of this blue feel, and Dogfight has a lot of like neon lighting
Like
too,
bright, too.
which is cool.
Yeah.
But just another similarity between these two musicals.
Mm-hmm.
And let's move on to our final segment of today and talk about the character development, because there is a lot to unpack in these two musicals for sure. So let's talk about Evan's character development, just because that's kind of been a common theme throughout this episode so far. So Evan clearly is a boy who struggles with a lot of problems, and the cool thing about this musical is we kind of get to see him accept those problems and start to take steps to fight them, and also accept that it is okay to have problems, and it's not necessarily the end of the world to have some character flaws, like Evan does. But one thing that I find just awesome in the writing and in the performance, specifically by Ben Platt, is the way that we start and end the show of Dear Evan Hansen. And the show starts with Dear Evan Hansen, today's going to be a good day, and here's why. And the show also ends with Dear Evan Hansen, today's going to be a good day, and here's why. And the difference in delivery between those two lines at the beginning and the end of the show just speaks, it's so much about the character development that took place in Evan. So he starts the show off pretty unconfident and doesn't really believe the fact that today's going to be a good day, because it isn't going to be a good day because of where he is in his mental journey, right?
Yeah.
But then he ends the show with full confidence that today's going to be a good day because he's started to really understand who he is and accept who he is. And if that's not character development, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's not something that I've actually ever picked up on when I watched Dear Evan Hansen, so it's really interesting to kind of like see that and hear that, because there's so much like kind of to unpack between like the beginning and the end and the growth. So I actually wanted to kind of compare the main character in Dogfight, whose name is Eddie, and then Evan, because I feel like there's a lot of similarities between the two of them, kind of, and like differences that I feel like would be really interesting to unpack.
Yeah.
So Eddie is he's in the Marines, and so he's very like bro-y. I don't know how else.
Pretty masculine.
Yeah, very much like, oh yeah. And so he very much kind of like fits that stereotype. And as you kind of go through the show, he kind of he lies, which Evan also lies.
Yeah.
And it causes a bunch of problems, and I feel like Eddie kind of stands up to his problems more and is more like, let's fix this, whereas Evan, I feel like, kind of like retreats a lot more and doesn't necessarily like in the end, like everything gets fixed, but he just keeps lying. It's lie after lie, whereas with Eddie lies once and then he's like, let me fix that.
That's true.
Which is kind of interesting to see how they took the writers took a very similar story, with the whole like lying aspect, and took the characters in two different directions.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
I mean, both of these kind of start with peer pressure.
Yeah.
In a sense, like obviously, like I don't know whether he would have participated in the dogfight if all of his bros weren't participating in the dogfight, and Evan obviously never would have made up this lie about Connor Murphy on his own. That would be the end of the world for him.
Yeah.
So they kind of start by this peer pressure and the fact that they don't feel like they can get out of it. And the cool thing about these two characters is they are kind of the strong ones that, kind of realize that they can get out of it, and it's just going to take a lot of work. And so I think both of these characters, in their own way, are pretty strong compared to a lot of their peers. So it's kind of cool to see them develop on that as the story continues.
Yeah, definitely.
But speaking of Evan Hansen, let's transition back into another performance by Dylan Catapat, who's going to sing Words Fail for us, which is an incredibly emotion-packed song at the end of Dear Evan Hansen. Take a look.
I never meant to make it such a mess. I never thought that it would go this far. So I just stand here sorry, searching for something to say. There's something to say. Words fail, words fail. There's nothing I can say. I thought I could be part of this. I never had this kind of thing before. I never had that perfect girl who somehow could see the good part of me. I never had the dad who stuck it out. No corny jokes or baseball gloves. No mom who just was there, 'cause mom was all that she had to be. That's not a worthy explanation, I know there is none. Nothing can make sense of all these things I've done. Words fail, words fail. There's nothing I can say, except sometimes you see everything you wanted, and sometimes you see everything you wish you had, and it's right there, right there, right there in front of you. And you want to believe it's true, so you make it true. And you think maybe everybody wants it, needs it a little bit too.
Dylan, that was fantastic. That is one of the most hard songs to sing. As a male musical theater actor, it is incredibly difficult to perform, and you nailed it out of the park, dude. Fantastic.
Yeah, he's so talented. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so let's get into some results from today, and see who you guys actually think is the better musical, and then who Chicago Children's Theater thinks is the better musical. So we had an Instagram poll. What were the results for that one?
The Instagram poll was 89% of you voted for Dear Evan Hansen and 11%
That's right.
voted for Dogfight. Disappointing.
I hate to say it, both these musicals are great, but the fame, I mean, not to be rude, but Dogfight didn't even quite make it to Broadway, and Dear Evan Hansen has become one of the most popular musicals, so it's not that close to a fight. So I have a feeling we know who Chicago Children's Theater's pick is going to be, and it is, in fact, Dear Evan Hansen. So you were a great debater, but I think my musical does kind of speak for itself.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Broadway Battles today. It's been so much fun to film.
It really has, yeah. Real quick before we end, we just want to do one more kind of shameless plug for Chicago Children's Theater, who is the organization receiving all the donations from this project. So if you feel so inclined and want to support a fantastic organization as well as us, donate to the link in the bio, because 70% of the proceeds from that will go straight to CCT, and the other 30% will go back into our company, Four Seasons, to fund our future projects.
Yes, definitely. Please go donate. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on all of our social media. I'm sure it will be somewhere on the screen. And go check out our website, which is fourseasonsperformingarts.com, and sign up for our emailing list.
Absolutely. Just one more huge thank you to Gwen Royal and Dylan Catapat for performing today. You guys were fantastic.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Broadway Battles. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.